So these are the topics that we're going to look at for today's talk. We look at the CNF architecture and what are the different modules that CNF architecture invites to have the caching forward ideology. Then we have the content name resolution service protocol and the different algorithms that we've implemented to have the name resolution service. Next, we look at implementation on Orbit. Um, Again, the different protocols that we used for implementation on Orbit. Then we'll go over our results for the baseline algorithm and the improvements to the baseline algorithm. And finally, I would like to provide a summary and future work recommendations. So what is CNF architecture? CNF architecture tries to take advantage of the fact that there is reductions in memory costs and tries to provide mobile content delivery, provide a solution for optimized mobile content delivery. So the motivation for this for CNF project, um, we have the current following network challenges. There's growing internet usage through mobile devices, and these mobile users are connected intermittently. So the traditional TCP/IP model is not suitable for these kind of mobile disconnected networks. TCP was originally based on the ideology of uh, having all the logic at the end nodes and keeping the network simpler to optimize it for data forwarding. Also, we now have time varying nature of wireless links. Along with that, there is need for newer services. There's definitely a need for content-based networks. Stats show that torrent download contributes to 30% of network traffic today, and all of this network is named content that is being downloaded. We also need delay tolerant architecture, so the users get disconnected intermittently, and retransmissions from the end sources is not efficient. Hence, we need a system where we can have disruption tolerant architecture. We also need this distributed caching. There's reduction in cost for storage, and we can leverage this fact and have in-network caching of content. We would also like to have hop-by-hop system for intermittently disconnected networks. This would mean that at every hop we are trying to provide reliability, and we wouldn't have to have retransmissions from the end node. We would also like to have opportunistic transmission. So in case of disconnection, if the end user gets disconnected, the content would get stored or buffered at the router for a particular time, and we would hope for the mobile user to get connected back to the network, and that's when the delivery would continue. So our solution here is to have a clean slate network architecture that's optimized for mobile content devices. Let's look at the CNF protocol stack. On the left hand side, we have the CNF transport layer. We would like to have a hop-based transport layer. We also have the CNF network protocol. We're using a modified OLSRD at the network layer that uses the hold space at the router. So on the right hand side, we can see the CNF router, and that it has 3 layers of storage: the buffer, hold, and cache. So if the routing protocol decides that the next hop is not available, it would move the content to the hold space. Also, we have the cache space. So if there's some content that needs to be cached, we would leverage this storage at the router. So on the right hand side, we have control plane, and CNRS protocol and the cache management protocol take advantage of the cache space at the routers. So let's look at an example of how the CNF architecture works. We have the mobile client, and if a request from the mobile client goes to the media server, on the right hand side we can see that the media server is responding to this request by using hop by hop transport, and the file is being transmitted. The file now moves on to router 4. At this point, CNRS would decide to cache the content, and hence it moves to the cache space of the router. That's in network storage that we would like to have for CNF. The content transport continues and moves on to router 3 and router 2. we notice that the mobile client gets disconnected, and to discard the entire content would be wastage of resources, and we wouldn't like to have retransmissions back from the media server. So router 2 decides to move this content to the store space and hope for the mobile client to come back. And this is where we use opportunistic transmission and storage routing. This talk is mainly about the content name resolution service, and why we decided router 4 as the location to cache our content, and how would we go about resolving the content if another request from a client comes in for that particular content. Moving on to the CNRS protocol. CNRS is a framework for mapping content ID to its attributes. These attributes would be location information, cacheability information, popularity, and type of service. So the CNRS protocol tries to implement the mapping service to go from CID to the location information. This concept is basically derived from the ideology that all network objects can be brought down to persistent identifiers that would have some kind of abstract level. In our case, the network objects are the content files themselves, and the persistent identifier would be the content ID, the CID. So how do we get the CID? We use the SHA-1 hash. We take the hash of the content itself. That gives us a 20-byte digest of hexadecimal numbers. We call this the content ID, the CID. This CID is then compared with the hash of IP addresses of all the routers within the AS. So here we can see that we're doing a distance metric of hash of the content and hash of the IP addresses, and the IP address that gives the minimum distance metric is selected as the location for caching that content. So basically, we've come down from mapping the content, the CID, to its location, and we would now know what would be the IP address where we could retrieve the content from. But this is a baseline algorithm, and it's kind of random caching, because we would end up selecting a node, and this could be a bad node due to varying link quality. So what
if
is
I understand, you're going to hash your content, and then you're going to say, okay, I've got a table of 5 SHA-1s of IP routers.
For that particular AS or for that particular network stuff.
So you think this will scale later?
So
I mean, there's no way to search in hash space, and not with SHA-1. So unless you only have like 100 routers in the universe, and you want to do this for every, for only a finite amount, small amount of content, this is going to be a highly inefficient process.
But when you say routers, do you mean all the routers or within the network themselves, within a particular AS?
Right, so you're only doing this within one AS.
One AS, yes. And then this
And so my AS should only have 10 routers. What?
It could have like 100.
And so 100. And now how many content do you expect to have?
Depends on where the media server is.
Well, I usually watch hundreds of contents per day just through YouTube. You're already making this problem explode.
So when the content is being sent out from the media server, that's when the hashing algorithm would take place, and the media server would send a copy of the content to the end user, and at the same time also send a copy to the cache location.
All right, go on now. I don't like this, but go on.
So this mapping would only work in case of wired nodes. We are expecting a perfect scenario where all the network nodes are efficient, they have good performance, and they have enough storage space. But this wouldn't scale well in a real world scenario. So we would like to include link quality, and would like to provide an alternative to choose good nodes from bad nodes to cache our content. And later on we'll look at what are the improvements that we've done to the baseline algorithm.
So I think you should, before you describe that, you should mention what are the options. So if you have a piece of content stored at a router, the standard way of doing it would be to have a centralized table somewhere where you put a pointer, and then it will go to that service and get back the content. What you're doing here is that you're hashing it, doing a simple computation instead of a table lookup. But how simple is it? Depends on you. You have to answer Wade's question. Is that computationally cheaper than going to a server which itself has to do a sort or table lookup of some sort? Those are the options where you sort of jump into it and say this is the scheme.
So most things would actually do some type of tree search algorithm, but you just threw out any possibility of a tree search here. So I think your last statement about performance and so on is the key thing. Is yeah, this will work for a nice 10-node network with 5 movies I want to watch, or 5 movies per day or something.
But if the complexity is linear with the number of content objects, that will be pretty simple function you're computing, but you have to find the closest.
Finding the closest.
But that's a Boolean comparison. But again, these are for him to answer, not
Yeah.
me.
So our goal was to optimize choosing the location in terms of fewer number of hops, fewer number of network seconds to retrieve for the end user, and maximum availability in terms of cache hit percentage. So we tried to look at different ways or different approaches to achieve this. Like Professor Jay said, that we thought of different options. We also looked at handle server as an option where we would have this DNS type architecture and a global handle registry and a local handle registry. And every time a media server publishes a content, a pointer would be sent to the local handle registry, and an end user would go to the registry to find out where the location is. But we wanted to try to avoid the overhead to send these control packets to the server and try to resolve it locally and see if we have a cache copy within the network itself. So what are the network entities that are involved in the CNRS protocol? We have the CNRS server, we have the content hosting server, the CNF router, and the CNF requester. So the CNRS server keeps track of all content within a particular AS with respect to its content ID. So, like I said, there would be a pointer that would map the content ID to the original media server address, more like a DNS type service. And so this server would handle update information and deleting entries from the origin server. It would also respond to get info requests. So if an end user requests for content and this request is sent out to the CNRS server, it would give back the location information. Additionally, it can perform tasks of maintaining information such as popularity, cacheability, type of service, and time to live. So with cacheability, the origin server would typically tell the CNRS server whether this content is available for caching or not, or whether there's a permission to cache this content or not. And with popularity, we would know what's the percentage of hit for that particular content and use this information to have multiple caches for a particular content if the popularity is higher. We also have the content hosting server. So this is ideally our real world, the everyday media server that we have, and it is hosting content, but now it would perform an additional task of sending updates to CNRS server with its location. So what would happen when a requester requests for a content? This would trigger the CNRS service. The hash mapping algorithm would run. We would carry out the SHA mapping algorithm to find the cached router location. If the content is not, so at this point we are assuming that the router is having a cached copy, and we try to go to that particular router. And if we don't have a cached copy, that's when we go to the CNRS server to find the original media server information. Again, there could be add-ons to this where we could have summary cache, and the routers would exchange information about what cache they have, more like a traditional routing table, but along with the routing table, it would also maintain information about what kind of content its neighbors are caching. So what would a CNF router be? So what would be the functionality of the CNF router? When it receives a cached content request, it would check if it locally has a copy of the cached content. If not, it would send a negative response to the requester, and that's when the requester would go to the original server. The gateway router would also have an additional task of sending any new content that's coming from outside the AS to a particular cache location. So here we can look at an example of how CNRS would work. We have the media server on the left, and an example where it has three contents with ID1, ID2, and ID3. It sends an update information to the CNRS server, letting the server know about the content that it's hosting. It could also happen that it is no longer hosting a content, and a delete message would be sent to CNRS server where that entry would be deleted. Again, we could have multiple mirror sites for these media servers, and then there would be multiple entries at the CNRS server. So what happens when a requester requests for a content? It says here the requester says that it needs file movie mpeg.1. It sends the request to the router C, doesn't find a copy from the cache location, so it goes to the CNRS server. The CNRS server lets the client know where the original content is, and the request is forwarded to the media server. Now the media server would send back the content, and at this point the content is cached at router C, and a copy is also sent to the end user. Again, here an update would be sent to CNRS server so that information about this caching would also be updated. Now next time when a user is requesting for the same content, this content request would be served from router C itself. So what is the alternative approach that we looked at? We could have content routing within an AS. So if the router has an entry for the cached copy, it would go to the next hop or else follow the traditional IP routing table. But the challenge here was to build the content routing table. Ideally, the router would have to send out broadcast messages of the cached copy with a limit on the number of hops. And we can see that the content routing table could be built as follows. We could have the content ID, the next hop for that content ID, and the request frame. So how would this work? Like in the previous example, the media server would send an update to the CNRS server, and there would be periodically there would be updates to inter-AS CNRS as well. Now, when a requester is requesting for a content, the content request is actually being directed directly to the CNRS server rather than running the hash algorithm. And en route, the routers are trying to look at the content routing table as well to see if they have information about the cached copy. And if so, they would the routers would return the content, or else the info is returned from the CNRS server. If the CNRS server also doesn't have information about the content, then this request would be relayed and forwarded to the inter-AS CNRS. So we talked about having improvements over the baseline algorithm and how we could incorporate link quality and popularity metric into the algorithm. So on the left hand side, we can see that we have the multiple hashing technique. Here, instead of taking just one hash, we take three different hashes: SHA1, SHA2, and MD5 in our case. This gives us three different content locations. And now we would like to select one of these locations for caching and retrieving the content. We would use the ETT metric here to decide which among these three locations would cache the content. So the long-term expected transmission time from the routing table would let us know what's a good path to cache the content and to retrieve the content. On the right hand side, we have the popularity based algorithm. This would mean that we would cache multiple copies of the content within the AS, and this decision would be based on the request or the hit rate. So what are the advantages that we get by doing this? With multiple hashing, we avoid the low link quality paths for caching, and with popularity metric, we increase the chances of cache hit and reduce the chance of cache miss and make the content more available. Next, we also looked at topology-based caching. So if we have a graph, we can always find the Jordan center, the minimum eccentricity points. So these are the minimum worst case maximum hops for a particular graph. This concept is used by social networks like Facebook, where they try to find out what's the minimum eccentricity point for a particular profile, and that's how it sends information about what could be your possible friend request and sends you information about these friend requests.
So what is eccentricity?
Um, so this particular node would have minimum eccentricity. That means that it would have the minimum value for the maximum number of hop counts. So if we take the maximum hop count for each node and try to find out which node has the minimum value of worst case number of hops, then we would find out the Jordan center or the minimum eccentricity point.
I was actually asking what is eccentricity. I understood what you described the Jordan center to be, but what is eccentricity? What's the graph theoretic definition of eccentricity?
Not sure about that.
Okay. All right. Go on then.
Maximum hops.
Go ahead. Don't worry.
So we try to use this ideology from the social networks and try to use the concept of Jordan center into our algorithm. So if we have a network and we have end users at different parts of the AS, we would try to find out what are the central nodes within the network. In this case, it could be routers 4, 5, and 6, and this would serve as favorable caching locations. So if we have some particular content that's more popular than some other content, we would try to cache that content at routers 4, 5, or 6. That way, it's at a minimum hop for each end user. And the edge nodes could be used for caching less popular content. This way, we can improve the performance in terms of number of hops. Next, we would like to look at the implementation on Orbit. CNRS uses control packets to send these update informations to CNRS server. The request from the from the requester to the CNRS server. All these are in the form of control packets, and we can have a look at the format. We have the control bits that decide whether it's a put, get, or update message. We have the content ID that tells us what content is being referenced for that particular request. And then we have information on popularity, cacheability, and type of service. A typical entry at a CNRS server would include the content ID, the original media server address, the number of hits that it had, and the number of cache locations, and it would have a pointer to all those cache locations within the AS as well. We use the hop transport protocol as our protocol for the transport layer. We use hop because it's conceptually similar to the CNF transport layer, and it provides hop by hop reliability. At the network layer, we use modified OLSRD. Here we use the two-dimensional ETT metric, that's the long-term ETT and the short-term ETT. And based on that, we decide whether to forward the content, store the content, in certain cases forward if the next path has sufficient storage. So this is a representation of how the implementation was done on Orbit. The CNRS interfaces with the application layer, and it sends control packets to hop through the bulk API that the hop interface provides. Now hop uses burst mode for sending packet, and that's the background queue of the Mad Wi-Fi driver. As opposed to that, we've modified the hop implementation to send CNRS control packets as best effort in the best effort queue. So in this implementation, we would have two different queues, one for data and one for control packets. The data queue would use the burst mode, and the control packets would use the best effort mode, the best effort queue mode. And we also look at the next hop from OLSRT using the kernel routing table. So this is the experimental setup that we use to carry out our experiments. The number of distinct content files for this experiment used were 30. The cache space provided at each router was 3 files, that's 1.5 MB at each router as the cache space. We used LFU, the least frequently used algorithm for cache replacement. So in this particular topology, each end client would be requesting all the 30 files 3 times each. That would mean there would be a total number of total of 90 requests from each client and a total of 180 from both clients put together. The request rate was increased exponentially to increase the offered load, and we built this topology using IP tables so as to have this connection for nodes that are separated from more than one hop. So our baseline algorithm shows that if we use caching, then we definitely see improvement in throughput as the offered load increases. The network begins to saturate at 5 Mbps if there is no caching in our case, but we can see that the throughput rises steadily in case of the baseline caching algorithm. Also, we noticed that the file size, varying the file size by some amount doesn't have a significant impact on the throughput. Now we would like to look at how we use the popularity-based caching algorithm. For this experiment, we used 10 files for the experiment, and we used 2 different distributions, the equiprobable distribution and the Gaussian distribution. The equiprobable distribution generates equal number of requests for a particular file. In our case, we used 3 requests for each file, so a total of 30 files being requested for the equiprobable distribution. For the Gaussian distribution, we used a mean of 4 and a standard deviation of 2. So here we can see that file number 4 was requested 8 times, and the other files were requested for a less number of times as compared to that. So what we're trying to show here is that if we have popularity-based metric, and if some content is being requested for more number of times, we could cache that content at more than one location. But this doesn't necessarily show us improvement in throughput. So if we look at the equiprobable distribution, caching the content at more than one location actually decreases the performance, because there's an overload to send, there's an overhead to send all these contents at more than one location, because each of the files are being, all the files are being sent at more than one location.
Is that because the network is small? Because all these conclusions, if you have a large scale network, these conclusions will not hold.
So we tried to use different distributions like equiprobable. So
Like
each,
with 30 files, yeah, I mean, I can understand. I just want to say, when you say these conclusions, we need to have conditions.
yeah, it would be for a small network. So in this case, we see that in equiprobable distribution, if we cache the content at more than one location, it would mean that there's an overhead to send all these contents, and the throughput actually decreases as the offered load increases. But in terms of the Gaussian distribution, we are only sending specific files that have more popularity at more than one location, and we can see that caching them at more than one location has throughput gains as compared to just caching them at one location.
So what's Box-Muller?
Sorry?
Say Gaussian distribution using Box-Muller.
So Box-Muller is an open source code that provides generation of random Gaussian distribution for file requests.
So what is it that you're calling Gaussian distributed?
It's the file request that's being generated. So
Are there negative amounts of file requests?
definitely not.
So you're not really using Gaussian.
So the Box-Muller Gaussian implementation limits it at 0, so it has a limit at 0.
I don't think you know what you just said, actually. Anyway, what you're saying is it looks kind of like a bell curve, even though it doesn't have tails that go to minus infinity
Right.
and positive infinity, and so you're going to say it's kind of bell-shaped, right?
So what we're trying to show here is that there's some particular content that's being requested. We were trying to have a distribution where some particular content would be requested more number of times as compared to
But for something that's a discrete random variable, why not use like a binomial or something that is actually a discrete random variable rather than go borrow something from a continuous random variable and then use it wrong? Okay.
So we can also see that when we use the no caching algorithm, the equiprobable distribution and the Gaussian distribution, LFU cache replacement causes more number of replacements in terms of equiprobable distribution, because each file is being requested equal number of times and there's a more probability of content being replaced as opposed to the Gaussian distribution, because it tries to hold back the content that's being more frequently used. So if we look at the cache hit percentage, it again shows that with equiprobable distribution, we would have less of a cache hit percentage as compared to Gaussian. So we're trying to show here that in a real world scenario, there would be local popularity within a network for a content, and we could use this information to cache content at more than one location. So we talked about using Jordan Center as a metric to cache our content, and we were trying to see how cache distance affects the throughput. So if we see in this example, like if the cache location is just one hop away, we have significant gains in terms of throughput, and as the cache distance increases in terms of hop count, the throughput decreases as well. Also in this example, we tried to use CNRS with hop and CNRS with the TCP protocol, and we had a 1% packet loss for the experiment. So it also signifies that for TCP, the retransmissions were taking place from the source itself, and hence the throughput is less as compared to CNRS with hop. Our next experiment included having packet loss using simulated packet loss at the MAD-Wi-Fi level. The packet loss was we had lossy link routers with a simulated packet loss of 2% to 10%. So the routers, the dotted lines show that the link quality with these routers had a packet loss of 2 to 10%. So in this experiment, we saw that if we use multiple hash technique and if we try to use the long-term ETT metric to cache the content rather than just use the baseline algorithm, we definitely see improvements in throughput. So with an offered load of 5 Mbps, multiple hash technique provides a better throughput as compared to just the baseline algorithm. This is purely because multiple hash technique is trying to avoid the paths that have low link quality. So for this project, we designed and implemented the CNRS protocol with a real-time implementation for a small network prototype. We also tried to use different request distributions and try to test the popularity algorithm, the multiple hash technique, and the Jordan Center technique. We also saw that with lossy links, multiple hash technique provides better throughput and better performance as compared to the baseline algorithm. Future recommendation for CNF and CNRS would be that we could have experiments with larger topologies and have inter-AS message exchanges. We could also have an implementation of summary cache where all the routers are exchanging information about the content that they are caching. We can also have experiments with request distributions, different request distributions and traffic models. And lastly, we could have an experiment where we integrate CNF with the WiMAX and mobile vehicular nodes and make sure that the transport moves on to the WiMAX node when there is no connection to WiMAX.